people help you paint your castles pink while at the same time like challenging you and calling you out on your shit. It's such a balance. And the thing is, like, the 5 people you surround yourself are so important, yet it's so hard to find those people.
Hello. Welcome back to the podcast of Biz on the Brain with your host, Anne-Marie, where we talk about how to be your truest, most authentic and unapologetic self to show up as you and attract the right kind of people who like you for you in life and business. Because how amazing is that when you just embrace yourself, come from self-compassion, show that to other people, live a fulfilled life, and just spread the joy and bust those stupid restrictions and how you should be and how you ought to be. And like, we're not having that in this space. We're more explorative. Is that a word? We're exploring, we're experimenting, we're embracing the weird. I personally seek more weird in my life. And in this podcast episode, which is really a long one because we got into all of the goodness that is being weird, being yourself, finding the people who actually find that appealing and creating a community of sorts, even through just singular and very singularly curious relationships with people from all over the world, and maybe even just through online spaces, because that way you can actually find people you connect to on such a weirdly specific and nourishing way that when you meet them in real life, you suddenly feel like you've known them for forever, and people will look at you like, have you known these people? And you're like, no, we've met for the first time, but we're already like the same. We're like the same person. And I love that person. Right? So this episode has been super great. And I was talking to Evelyn about how she went through those phases of having a little breakdown. There's really nothing little about it that helped her dismantle all of these constructs and sometimes self-imposed restrictions and limitations to then step up, grow out of it, go back into it, and actually having also support systems by going back into work. And in turn, inspiring other people to just see that as a new status quo, somebody with boundaries, somebody with a different lifestyle, with different needs and accommodations, and then in turn, using all of those learned skills and insights to helping other business owners, especially female business owners and entrepreneurs, to make their own path in a way that suits them and their desired lifestyle, because only you can know what you need in your specific phase in your current life. And it's always very much beneficial when you have other people to soundboard with and that they can help you objectively in your situation, because you're in it, you're in the thick of it. And as much as you want to be objective or as much as you want to figure out by yourself, it's really not easy, or sometimes even kind of not possible, feasible, or even rational to do that, because we all live in society, and through the collaborative approach, by showing vulnerability, and by opening up and asking for help, can you actually level up much faster, much more easier, and get a community in the process, which is so nourishing. And that's what I love here. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Evelyn. Hello, and welcome so much. You did the noise. That was our sinking sound, because I decided that instead of doing the typical clap of like having the board, I can't do that on Zoom, and Zoom doesn't like harsh noises. I guess it filters out a pitch. So we decided we're going to go with like pterodactyl noises to sync the audio for myself. So this is a little behind the scenes of the entire podcast episode production, which I'm all by myself. Thank you very much, everybody in my team. Thanks. So thank you so much for being here, Evelyn. And do you want to quickly introduce yourself? Because you're such an amazing and fun human being, and I want the world to see more of you. So welcome.
Thank you very much. My name's Evelyn Pacitti. I'm an enthusiastic experimentalist, American gone European, and I help people find sort of this blend of work and life. After recovering from 4 burnouts, I said something is terribly wrong, and I have to figure out what to do about it. So I started engineering the process, because I have a background in 20 years in photonics engineering. And I just said, how can I understand what's going on? How can I make it quantifiable? And really unlock the process of what does wellness really mean to me and how do I know if it's working? And today I share those techniques with others.
I love that. Yeah, and I'm sure you have like a lot of experience where you just fell on your face and you're like, I wish I had had that before, but now you're the person helping others do that. And I think that's so important in business that you sometimes just help your older self for people who are on that path because you've been there, done that. You know what it's like, and you don't have to be 1,000 steps into the future. You can just like help people as you go along, like kind of pay it forward. But, just having this little circle experience. And I love that you approach it from like you come from the engineer, like a very analytical background. And I'm like the opposite. I'm like the floaty, breezy, creative type of just like figuring out as I go.
Yeah, I definitely like my structure and to know where things are. Yet I also, because I'm also neurotypical, I tend to weave in and out of this structure. And I need that structure to sort of be there. But at the same time, you're always constantly breaking it apart and rebuilding it. So how can you make those structures really simple and reliable so that you can make progress? And I think that's what it comes down to with also in my work today is all the frameworks that I built are really just a handful of 4 or 5 simple exercises and ways to think of things that you can then use to sort of structure and start experimenting in your life.
I love that. And I love the neurospacey approach because our thing, because I'm ADHD, like diagnosed, is really just finding all of those patterns and then just questioning in them or being like, that doesn't make sense. Let's just do something else. Let's improve it. Like I'm a rebel. If it doesn't make sense to me, I will refuse to do it. My body will literally just like, nah, we're not doing this. Like you can't do it. And then I always ask the question, like, why do we do this? Like, what is the reason behind this? Why don't we do the step before that? And so it is really refreshing and important. And yes, also annoying to a lot of people who are sticklers to some arbitrary rules because, but it's a pathway to innovation. It is so necessary to sometimes just, we always need to check in with our mental health, with our physical health, with our quotas or like with our business performances, like, but why don't we check in with the routines? Like there's so many consultants out there whose bread and butter is to consult people on how to do things better from an outside perspective. But sometimes you actually have to do that more regularly until, because sometimes they do it when stuff is already so bad. But if you just regularly do that, if you listen to people who have diverse thinking, you don't have to take everything on, but it's really important to keep that curiosity going. So I think that's really, really important that you're doing that. You're using that kind of symptom that kind of we have that is often disruptive for the good of it, because it can be both good and bad,
Yeah, I think when I think about rules and structure, and I think that's the thing I found the most interesting in my adventures, is that I really assumed there were a lot of rigid rules that you had to live by. All these walls of like, you have to show up in this way. You have to do engineering in this way. You have to work your 9 to 5 in this sort of pattern. And what I found in my recovery was that there was a lot more flexibility in these rules than I thought there were. I started saying, I need this. I started looking at my data and I said, okay, I need this to change. I need this kind of break. I need to be able to walk away. I need to not have this many meetings in a row. And when I first went back to the office, because I had the luxury, quote unquote, of burning out in the Netherlands rather than in the US, I had a rehab process. Like there was a reintegration process going back into the office where they expected me not to be on the top of my game, where they expected me to be in this recovery process. So I had the flexibility to start to play with the rules and see what I needed and set up the structures that I needed. But what I found was through the whole trajectory art and when I actually was fully recovered and I was back working full time and people who didn't know my past and burnout, they would just see me as the same engineer I was before I burnt out. Even though I had the habits, I had the mindset changes, I had the sort of structure set in that helped me that I thought were unbreakable before, how I took a lunch, how I structured my day, how I left, how I came in, what kind of even just checklists and to-dos that I thought would be inefficient or not acceptable really just kind of fell into place. Nobody questioned and it was really okay. And this made me start to think, what other things do I assume are solid wall, which are actually cardboard? How many of these walls can I knock on and they fall over that I've constructed for myself? And then you take that one step further and you're saying, okay, this wall is permanent. My boss says I have to be in between 10 and 4, for example. The organization says that. But then who made that wall? And I think that's the really fun conversation to be having is you do the work yourself. Then how do you have the conversation at the next level with your management? What kind of walls do they put in? What does the organization then put in? And then how can we have a bigger conversation about what work can really look like if we all start to be really honest about what do I need? What does that rhythm look like? How do my days work? And how can we, what is that win-win where it's win for people and win for business?
I love that. The disruptiveness going on because it is so crucial, like you said. And also there's like these two things about it where you start to set boundaries, you figure out your needs and you figure out a solution for them to accommodate all that. And then people see that and then they might be inspired or not even question it as that's just how you are. But you set those things for yourself in your own way. You know, other people would do it differently, but if you get this accepting environment where people don't give you like the slack for it, and, like talk bad about it, like who does she think she is? Like we're always doing this, you know, like that. If you had that environment, that would have been, of course, harder. But it's really great when you see people doing their thing and being productive, being happy, and working in the environment and wanting to show up at work because they are being accommodated, and you don't have to be neurospicy for that. Like everybody has some kind of preferences. We all have different internal clocks. We have different ways to be productive or different times when we have like this window of like power hour, and then we have like nap time, and then so many different countries try so many different things like the 4-day work week or just like 4-hour work days or having a nap room. Like in Sweden, when I encountered that for the first time, I was just like circling it like just suspiciously. I'm like, this is a trap. They're just gonna like wait until I'm in there and then just gonna like call me out. I'm like, I can't use this. You know, I'm just like, this it's not real. Like, why would there be a nap room at work? You know, so like
Did anyone use the nap room?
Apparently, I have never seen anybody go in, but my colleagues challenged me to use it. So I was like, this is the trap. And then my colleague was like, no, I challenge you, go in and nothing will happen. You can go in and snooze. I'm like, so how many minutes? Like, what's the time limit? Just like, whatever you need. I mean, before you take off the entire day because you have a headache, we'd rather you sleep for a half an hour or 15 minutes or whatever you need. And I can still do a little bit of work. Or like, we don't want you to be burned out. And I looked at them like, that's new. I was the one eating during lunchtime at my desk while I was still answering emails. And they had to force me out. Like, they had to drag me out of the room. Like, we're having fika now, which is the Swedish concept of having like a break time during like 2, 3 p.m. where you eat together with people. You drink your coffee and you eat your cake. And that is a thing that people do in Sweden. And I was like, this is wild. This is like working hours. We're chilling. They're like, chill out. We're not talking about work. We're talking about anything. And I was there, anxious German. I was like, this is weird. This feels unreal. And I couldn't focus. And they were like, calm down, calm down. It was like, so can we talk about the project? And they're like, no, we cannot talk about work. We're having fika now. I was like, I don't drink coffee. I don't need this. And I'm like, yes, you do. You clearly very much do. And they were right. But it took me months until I think it took me 5 months out of the 6 months I was there to go inside the room because I was like, I had such terrible period pains. And they were like, girl, go lie down. I was like, I can talk about period pains. Like, there was no problem about it. Like, this is such a new country. Like, oh my God, I love it. And then I was just like lying there for an hour because I needed it. And they were like, oh, how are you feeling? I feel better. I'm like, you're nice about it. You know, I had like so many weird constructs in my head, so many unnecessary fears, which was really interesting. And then like the next place I worked in, there was like the entire opposite. They were bullying me every day. So that was not cool. But like, you know, the entire existence in Sweden at this workplace was great for that. And then you realize you can ask for things because I was bored to death at my admin job. So I was like, can I redesign this part of the business office? And they're like, yeah, go for it. And then I was like doing the archive and they were like, okay, you're still understimulated. Cool. Let's give you the biggest events we're planning and you just do it. I'm like, what do you want me to do? Like the entirety. Just do all the catering, do all of the scheduling, do all of the invites. You just do it. I'm like, cool. And I did it. Right. So like they knew they saw that I needed more different things while I also ran the Facebook account. I was like, more, give me more. And they were like, cool. But they weren't doing it to overpower me or like drain me of the energy. They were just also checking in, like, so you're doing all of these random things. Like, what's up? Like, I thought I had to prove myself. And they're like, no, you don't. Like, you can also leave at exactly 5 p.m. You don't have to stay longer. I'm like, are you sure? They're like, yes, you're here to just have a short work experience. We're not draining you of your energy. We don't want to, source all the human resource out of you. And it was such a wild concept to me.
Were you able to take any of those experiences from Sweden and that support, or even the breaks? I don't know how to pronounce the 3 o'clock word, and use it today?
Not really. I like talking about it. Like personally, now that I'm a freelancer, yes. I keep forgetting about it, but it did help me shape the fact that I can do whatever I want. It's fine, especially if I'm my own boss. All of these weird constructs of you have to work 9 to 5 because that's where your clients work. No, I don't. I can still send an email at 11 p.m. I can schedule it out if I want to, if I'm productive. Nobody says that I have to take a lunch break. Maybe I can go for an entire walk, or like maybe I can go shopping. If it helps me, especially as a creative, it's just you can't sit at your desk and be like, yep, now I'm creative. Boom. That's not how things work. And so the more I realize how I work, the more I can tell people, today isn't the day. Today you get 10% of my energy. If you want to reschedule, we can. But, the other week I did a photo shoot and I had so many cool ideas, and then things didn't work out technically. There were so many glitches, and like the model wasn't really in her energy. I wasn't feeling inspired. And I was like, let's wrap this up. This is not helping either of us. It's like nice, but we can do better. So let's just allow ourselves to be, not even to fail, but to reassess things, right? It's just like, okay, we learn from this, we can do better. And maybe next time we're like on our best, and then to be okay with that. And the more I actually talk to people, which is one reason I started a podcast, to hear other people do their thing, that gives me permission and inspiration to just do my thing. The more I allow myself more self-compassion, or trying out different things and coming back to like patterns, because last year I completely abandoned all of my structures and my patterns, because with my diagnosis I was like, I'm free now, I need to rediscover my entire self, and that kind of blew in my face. Now I'm like floating freely, like without an anchor, and I was just like, I don't know how to keep hold of my days. They like either drag on or they rush by, and I'm like, I have nothing to anchor me. So like the more I talk to people about boundaries and about work patterns, the more I can also like backtrack and be like, yeah, that kind of works for me in this moment. And it's always good to know that you can do this in this moment, in this part of your life. You can do it that way. And it's okay if you change that next month or, in 2 months' time, because I cannot plan in advance. My ADHD will not let me know what's going on next month. Next month, maybe. But if you ask me to do something in 3 months' time, I'm like, can't tell you. I don't know where in the world I'll be. I don't know what my sleeping schedule will be. I don't know. And now I know that that's normal. That's just always how I've been. And those questions at job interviews, like, how do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm like, there's so many multiverses. Which one do you want?
I'm sorry. That's the best answer to that question I've ever heard. Could you please use it at your next interview?
I don't have job interviews, so
next interview.
Go for it. Yeah. I mean, like, with all this marvel, that's how I see, right? That's how my brain works. Like when people ask me a question and it's very non-specific, or the classic of like the client, like, I trust your creative process, and they give me 0 indicators of anything at all. It's like, here's just like random footage to edit. Go for it. I'm like, what do you want? A horror movie or a romance? Like, like what genre are we talking about? Like, what's the goal? What's the feeling? I need information, because I can do all the different things, like the different multiverses. Like ask me, or like 10 minutes ago, my English tutoring student left. Like occasionally, classic ADHD, like do random shit all the time. So like this girl, I'm teaching her English so she can be really good at school. And she and I sat down for like an assessment of like her English level. C1 was the goal, and they had questions, and I was like, 4 out of these 5 results are correct. Depends on the context. they're all grammatically correct. I need the context. I kind of knew what the answer would be in the minds of the assessor, I think. But I was like, none of this makes sense. Like, this entire question is like flawed. And I was just wanted to rewrite the entire questionnaire. And that's how I feel oftentimes when neurotypicals give you a straightforward answer and they expect you to figure it out yourself. I'm like, no, which path do I need to go down? There's like 5 different slopes.
I thought it was interesting when you were talking about how you had structure and then you blew it all apart and you're looking for anchors, because it's something that really resonates with me from my experience. When I left corporate and I started my own thing about a year and a half ago now, I really resisted structure in every way possible. Even though, like, I liked structure, I liked knowing where things were. And like, I'm known for simplifying ideas and creating frameworks, flow diagrams so that people can follow along, bringing people on board, creating enthusiasm. These are my superpowers. And I literally walked away from it because I thought, I'm not in corporate anymore. I don't have rules to follow. I don't have structures. And I get the feeling that that's sort of the similar thing you did once you got your ADHD diagnosis, that you're like, I have a new rule book I could play with. So all the old ones I'll throw out without even thinking about what is working for me. What not? What are those anchors that stabilize my day and my thoughts? And I think that process of breaking down your expectations and then finding the anchors that did work within that jumble, I think is an art form all in itself. And I love seeing, and I think much like you, and you have the podcast interviews for this, is seeing how people are structuring their day. What does that blend? I mean, that's the conversation I always have. What does that work-life blend look like for you? You know, how do you find that balance? How do you have the energy to do the things you love and also take care of the people that you love or participate in other passions? You can hear me getting all excited about it. Like, what are those things? Like, what are those secret things in your life that make it work? So have you found any anchors that you go back to now?
Not yet. I feel like currently my like PDA is kicking up like a storm and being like, no, everything sucks. Like, expectations, what's that? And like in the past, I used to be so anxious. Like, anxiety was always wrapped into all of my delivery. Like, if I had, like the typical time blindness, we are like, I still have half an hour to go. I still have some time to do, I don't know, deep clean the entire apartment, something like that. And then I'm like running late, but I magically bend time through sheer anxiety, of force of panic propelling me forward to still make it on time, like right on time. And then people are like, you're always so on time. I'm like, yes, damn it. It's like into panic screeching. And now I'm like, I feel bad about it, but I'm like, I'm overcorrecting. I'm still haven't figured it out quite. But like, what used to work for me really well is like the first hour of the day where I had like some kind of ritual, like when you go to the bathroom, you brush your teeth, go to the toilet, you're like, these kind of ritualistic things. I managed to integrate like meditation and like watering my plants and stuff into that. But somehow I can't tap into that anymore. It's trying to get out of bed, doom scrolling on TikTok instead, and then just going to the washing up thing. And then I'm super hungry, but I'm supposed to go walking because that's like the first part of this weird concept I put on myself instead of eating. And so I'm stuck in executive paralysis. I'm like, but I'm so hungry, I should rather eat. But like, if I'm so hungry, then I need to change into my outdoor clothes, but I'm wearing my outdoor clothes, so I can't eat indoors. Like this weird inside outside clothes thing that I have. And then there's like one pattern that really worked with me before the pandemic, because I was always traveling, always on the go, which is perfect for ADHD because you have all of these deadlines. You have like only that deadline to catch that, I don't know, exhibition or that flower, these time windows, or like you need to catch the train. So like you can't just watch an entire Netflix series. You have to catch a train because that's actually more dopamine. So that's cool. And then you have like 2 hours of the day left. So now it's time to work in business and do stuff, and then got done like all in one day. Now I have the entire day and I get nothing done. Right. So like that worked. And at times when I was so busy, I actually set myself a timer. Like I have this app, what is it called? Not Todoist, with Toggle. And it helps me track things because I have no sense of time. Well, I always say like, oh yeah, it will take me 10 minutes and then it's like an hour. Sometimes it takes me an hour instead of 3. Like, I can't assess that. And the more I did it, the more I could actually track it and have objective estimates. But it also was like racing against myself, which is like, oh my God, like yesterday I took like an hour to do this blog post. What if I did it in 50 minutes today? And so I was optimizing it with playing with the stupid timer tracking app because Pomodoro doesn't work for me. that will just lead me to like, like when you snooze the alarm and you just hit it again and again. That's what I do with Pomodoro. I'm like, no, 45 more minutes, 45 more minutes, 40. It's just like, what the heck? It doesn't matter. Right. So like this app sometimes just helps me be like, okay, you did 5 hours, like straight on zombie mode, hyper focus. Okay. So like the next 2 days you're off, you can do whatever you want. But now that I am having all of the time in the world, this app doesn't do it for me. So I'm like, again, it's, at the beginning. So that's frustrating.
It's funny. I use the same tools because I tried Pomodoro and it was a total disaster, but I do use Toggle. And I actually use Toggle as like an accountability buddy.
Mm-hmm.
So like I turn it on and I was like, I am building website copy. And I turn it on. And then sometimes I look at it and I was like, I'm not building website copy anymore, am I? I have to turn you off and I have to change this whole block into lost.
Oh, I like that. No, I just changed it to like, lost is a good, because sometimes I just like, I start doing the project and then there's like a side quest going on. And then I like suddenly redesigning my entire website. And then I'm like, yeah, I didn't do that. And I just changed the description of the blog. And sometimes I go back and try to
quest.
Yeah.
But then I have these color blocks for like different categories and I've had too many blocks and I've had not enough blocks. And now I like look at it and I'm like, okay, so I was supposed to be doing client work this week or building my website or marketing. And I spent almost the entire time doing systems design and automation, which at this point in my business is probably not the highest priority.
That's how I procrastinate too.
But it's interesting because you actually put in like time estimates. Anytime anyone tells me, please time estimate all your tasks, I want to destroy. I was like, no. I make them different t-shirt sizes, small, medium, large, and extra small. And like, I know what those approximately are. I mean, a medium task is anywhere between an hour and 3 hours. Like, it's like that kind of window. Like, it could, I don't know how long it'll take, but it's sort of in that range.
Yep.
So that's why AI tools that automatically load your schedule. Like, you have to give every task have you not seen those? You know, your tasks, your time blocks in and say like, I have a meeting here. I want to go for a walk here. These are the tasks I want to do and how long they take. And it'll automatically reassess it. And like, if things begin to move in your day, like this task you haven't completed, like it'll start shifting stuff out and moving things around. Oh, I think you could even like I think will even look at what kind of tasks and you can tell it like how you wanted to design your system. Sorry if I just gave you a giant rabbit hole to dive into.
Yeah, I'm like curious now if it will freak me out and make me really mad, or if I would be like trying to race against this robot and like, you underestimated me, that could happen.
But it's just like it builds your day and it starts readjusting.
It might also be depressing. I don't know. I'm torn about it.
I've been using the time tracker for a year. And of course, like I don't match it back to the task I was actually supposed to do. I just look at it, but I look at the pattern and like, I never work between the hours of like 1 and 3.
Yeah.
I just like tend to wander off, do other things, play video games, go for walks, do house errands. And then I want to start working again at around 4 o'clock, which is about the time I should be making dinner and start prepping for the family. But then I like kick into a whole other mode and I want to work from like 4 to 7. And I'm like, how do I make this work in my life?
Right. That's interesting because like last year, because, in Germany, they, if you're lucky enough to get diagnosed as an adult with ADHD, they will give you meds and then say like, try things out and then report back to us. And we'll see if like your heart still beats, because I get heart palpitation. They're like, figure it out, different doses, go for it. And that's it. That's the only support I got. And so I went to him like, so my life is weird and shit. And I need guidance. Like I need somebody who knows about ADHD to like coach me or like give me therapy or like whatever. And then they were like, you're on your own. Here's a little business card. Maybe they know something. I don't know. I'm like, great, thank you very much. And I called a bunch. And then one of them responded, they had like an opening. And I was like, do you know stuff about ADHD? They're like, yeah, I had like one client with ADHD. I'm like, well, whatever. And I went there and it was terrible because he was like, so we need you to set up like, it's like, he wanted me to structure my entire day and stick to it. And was like, dude, I thought he knew about ADHD. And he was just like, trying to tone down my energy. It was like, I need this energy to get stuff going. If you come at me and be like, oh, you're swiveling in your chair and you're so energetic. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? And in the end, I was masking, like praised for masking. Was like, dude, no, you don't know anything about ADHD. That was a waste of money. But he was just like, he was getting frustrated because I was not cooperating at all. I tried to like, I can't, like, I need structure, but I don't want that kind of structure. I need structure where I can be flexible, but I have some goalposts I can move around maybe, but something I can hold on to. But the way he did it was like making me very rejective of the entire suggestion. And he was like, so you know what? We're going to just track what you're doing. Like, we're just going to look at what you're doing. And then I'm going to like look at it objectively because you can't. And then we're going to see from there. But do you think I did that? No. I I got these printout sheets of the day. I don't know where they went. They just moved around the room like magically. But then every time I suddenly had like end of the day, I would be like, oh, completely blanked. I don't know what I did at what hour on that day. I couldn't fill out these things at all. I wasn't even tracking anything. And so I just randomly guessed stuff, and we all know that that's not very helpful. So that didn't help me at all. So like I tried with the app. Like at one point I actually realized that you can have an extra calendar in Google, and then you can fill out like an overlay. You can fill out what you actually did or what you actually wanted to do, and then like turn it on and off, like to see if it matches whatever. So that was interesting for a week. And then I also lost track of that, but just like, it is another task switching thing for me. If I have to like sit there every time I finish a task and be like, oh, I have to think about putting it into a system so I can assess it later, that gives me stress, or I will forget it existed, or it's just another thing I have to do because then suddenly I'm focused on typing it into this leaf of paper or into the software. And then I'm like looking at the software and like being focused on the software, but not moving on to the next thing. Like it's never for me, like just putting it in and moving on. I can't do that. So I kind of like toggle because it will give you a rundown of the week, but I'm also not very diligently using it all the time. Or if I'm getting stuck in a rabbit hole, I have like this whole blob of the day with undefined stuff I did. So I don't know how to track it. And like, it's so much easier if I have parallel co-working or like travel schedules, and that's easy to break down.
I find that the co-working definitely helps, like having somebody that like body double kind of work. Yeah. But I think that's really hard to do as a freelancer in many ways. Yeah. Like how do we create that environment? And I mean, that's why I come to my co-working centers like this, but it's like, I feel like if you're not talking to them, it's pretty much the same as having a house plant.
Yeah, exactly. Then they just become like, you come blind to it. Like, because they're there every day, they're just like non-existent at all. And then it's awkward. Like, do I actually start talking to them? Like, I've been sitting here for 8 weeks. I don't know their name. Do I start now? Is that weird? And then all of the social awkwardness comes right in. So I used to love like just going to fancy cafes because there's a lot of stimulation, but I put on my headphones and like go into like focus mode. And then when I get like a bit distracted, I just see some random person working somewhere, reading a book, and I'll be like, oh, they're busy, so I must be busy. Like, telling myself that story to keep going. Or I was never really a fan of like co-working spaces. Like I like them in principle, but I don't like them in like in actuality because it is too boring many times. Like it's just like this other type of office, but it's open. I hate open offices. Can't. Which is funny because I like cafes, but they're like different vibe, right? Or they're just people like looking like they're having a fun conversation. I'm sitting over here having FOMO, So, or like I saw like a lot of co-working, like in Thailand and in Bali. But the problem is I always have to like, you can only go there without shoes, and I don't want to touch my bare feet on like the surface, but it's too hot for socks. I'm a sock person. And so I'm just like having this weird, very specific overstimulation sensation going on. Like, oh my God, look at the germs, which I can't see, I know. But like, oh my God, look, there's a stray hair. Oh my God, did I touch that hair? Like having existential crises because I can't sit in socks. So like they freak me out. And like in those particular places, it's a very specific thing, I guess.
But it definitely sounds like you've tried all of these different things, and you have some fun things that you've tried. Like the cafe, I could never do the cafe. I don't think I could, even with my headphones on. I think it would be too much for my system to take in. I'd be too busy watching all the people go by to focus.
Yeah, but I like it because usually it's like good food when you realize like, because like when I'm focused, the typical override of your basic needs kicks in. So like I can go 8 hours without any basic things. Like I'm in pain. And then when I like jolt out, I'm like, why am I in pain? Where's the sunset? Like, what's going on? Like what happened? And I'm like, oh, you didn't drink, you didn't go pee, you didn't eat anything. So obviously you're like hunched over, like in pain, and you can't even do anything. You can't decide at this point. You're like living in this brain fog. So when I was sitting at a cafe, I'm like, oh, that looks fun. I'm like, oh, I could eat that. And then I just order it. And usually, it helps me not figure things out. It just like comes into my field of vision. And then I'm like, oh, it appeals to me. I order it. Especially if it's like places like Bali or like Thailand, where it's really affordable, much more affordable than having to cook for yourself, which is a whole other set of making decisions, which I'm not the best at. Like too many options. So they take away all of the options because I just see something and I like it. I get it, And then there's like, usually I choose based on aesthetics and quality of food. And so I'm like, this cafe is like so Instagrammable. It's adorable. It's cute. I need to be there. And then I just sit there until I soak up all of the dopamine, or until I get bored, or until I get distracted. I'm like, let's just go to the beach and look at the sunset. Like it's this weird drifting in and out, but I could do it. And it actually helped me. Like I've never been as productive as I was like in Bali, where I was the most distracted because there were always people asking me to go out to this place, to go on a day trip here, to go to this party, to check out this cafe. And it was like helping me to just really cram in that time, but also be much more appreciated of the work, where I'm like, I'm making all of this work so I can enjoy life. Like really that kind of abundance that everybody's like going for, like picture yourself, like your dream life. Like I was just like, this is it. It's great. Yeah. So like that was really nice. It didn't last very long, obviously, because I was just like itchy feet and also visa regulations and stuff like that. But yeah, that was cool. But I cannot seem to be able to replicate it once I am especially home in Germany. It's just, I know travel is a different concept because everything is novel, which is great for dopamine. But yeah, it just stagnant and like kind of best of both worlds, where I'm just stuck in my own home. And I could be hermit mode. It can be like too many people. I'm just going to be like, like a granny just sitting outside, like looking at people go by, or like watching my plants, or like maybe finding a cat on the street to be friends with. I don't know. And then the next 2 months, I'm just going to go out and be wild, traveling the world, running into like weird chaos and meeting friends on the way, and then go back to hermit mode. Like that kind of balance is what I'm currently striving for. But I've kind of positioned myself into this hermit mode full time, which sucked out all of the momentum to do the other thing, which is my current dilemma, I would say.
So when you that momentum and that, like, what do you think got you stuck? Because it's one of those things that I think home is a very tricky thing, because there's so many things that you like expect to how to operate, and like you have these very old rhythms, and I think that's one of the reasons that it's like kind of freeing to jump countries and to like rewrite the rules. As somebody who like switched countries, and like it's a reboot in many ways, I look back and I was like, I sort of in many ways recreated what I had before. And I think like my work patterns and my expectations, I wonder if I ever really, you got me thinking, if I ever really took in the cultures that were around me as much, or I continue to sort of force my systems where I'm at. It's really got me thinking out loud, because my husband is Franco-Italian. So not only do I live in the Netherlands, I also like am mixed in this. My husband was raised in the French education system. They speak mostly French at home, but he's 100% Italian in blood. So like they have these very strong Italian roots, and we spend the summers in Italy. And that culture for me is much more confronting in a way than it was the French culture. The French culture for me was like more easy to walk into, because I felt like they have more boundaries of like how things go, and how, while the Italians are more like, I'm doing my thing, I'm in my face, I'm taking my own space. We're three across a single lane merging onto a highway, I remember.
Yeah, and it's all like a suggestion, more like not a really strict rule.
I'm literally at a place and we're in line for coffee, and there's no queue. Like it's all just a mass of people. And the woman behind the counter says, "Who's next?" And this gentleman says, "Me." No, he says, "Them over there, but I'll take 2 cappuccinos and a croissant." That's not what you get in Italy, but it was like, it was very much that idea of, I see that they're here first, but I'm going to take my space and move forward. And that was very confronting for me at first, But now that I've been part of the family for 10 years and I've been like in the village and I know the people, like I see how fiercely loyal there is to this and like a loyalty that I don't see in other. And it's like, you got me thinking about like, how have I accepted and adapted either things that I love about living in the Netherlands or being part of my husband's cultures? How have I taken that in?
You should go travel somewhere else and then it will be a tough test for you. That's usually what I realized because like I grew up in Germany and I've always been the other person. I've always been the weird, quirky one. Guess why? ADHD, undiagnosed. But, people were literally telling me I'm like weird, I'm different, I should try to be this and that. Not very nice, not very helpful. And then when I traveled, because I always tried to reject the Germanness because I didn't, connect to it because it was rejected to it. It was like, yeah. And then I saw it from the outside questioning everything. I'm like, so why do we do these things in this order? Like, why do we do this thing? And obviously people don't like that. So when I traveled and suddenly was like, hey, I can be anything I want to because they don't know who I am. I can just completely tell them straight up lies if I wanted to, be like a different persona and just try that out for size. Like sometimes I would be like, today I want to be like this cocky, confident bitch. Let's just go try some people, just see what that is like. Like no real repercussions. Like, or sometimes like, how about today I'm like not talking to anybody. I will tell everybody no. Absolutely no, because I'm not feeling it today. And there's like, who cares? I don't care about your opinion on that person. Right? So like me being the eternal form of people pleaser, that was really hard, but also kind of nurturing in that way. And then when I traveled, the more I met people from other countries, the more they were like, you're so German. I was like, I kind of am. It's so funny. Like when you realize when other cultures challenge you in their ways of doing things and their habits, and when you get more reflective on like, oh, they do these things and I do these things, why do I do these things? But then you also realize how much of the culture you've adopted. And then when I come back home, people are like, oh my God, you're so American. Like, oh my God, I always say yay. What? I'm like, what? Right? So like, again, I never fit in anywhere. Like no matter where I go, I'll always be like this weird odd one out. And I'm like, just like, yeah, that's who I am in school. And it is just really interesting. Like the more I travel, the longer I stay in a place, how parts of me assimilate or how some things I adopt consciously or unconsciously, and how it will still collide, but also sometimes bring out the German in me. Like it's, that helped me with my self-discovery and like questioning those things, because you usually don't do that at home when you're like in your little bubble with the people who know you, who assume things of you in a certain way. But you have your little treaded paths, your rhythms and all of that. And even if you're disruptive like me, it just is still entirely different if you're actually being put to the test somewhere entirely else, especially when the culture collides to your typical habits. Sometimes it's directly opposed to what is expected, like how you cannot just talk to strangers on the street in Germany. You can't just sit next to a stranger and strike up a conversation like you could in like the US, or like try that in Japan, stuff like that. Or blow your nose in Japan in public. Oh my God, please don't do that. But you should do that in Germany. You shouldn't like suck it up your nose in Germany. That's the worst thing, but that's what you can do in Japan. Like all of these things are so random. And like one of the most insightful things I always like to say is just beauty standards. Like, I can go to, like I had these roommates from like China when I was studying in England, and they would always say like, I'm so slim. They want to see, like they want my body. And I looked at them like, I'm not, like, I'm just very regular in Germany. And like, especially compared to the US, like I'm big, whatever. And they're like, no. And I looked at them like, you look fine to me. And then I just go to a different country. Suddenly I'm fat. Next country, I'm super thin. Next country, I'm too dark. Next country, I'm so white. It's beautiful. I could literally go to a country to feel beautiful because, like at one point I had a hanbok, the traditional Korean outfit that I wore in Seoul. And then people started clapping on the street and calling me queen, because I literally was given I didn't know that, but they gave me like the attire of the queen. So like they were just like standing up the street clapping and saying nice things to me. And I was like, okay, weird, but okay, I get it, I take it. And so you can make yourself beautiful if you use the culture to your advantage. And I love that. Like the more you realize all of these patterns are so ridiculous and arbitrary, the more you can be like, it doesn't actually personally pertain to me anymore. Like it still affects me if I let it, but Like all of these things that people put on you, like you're too outspoken, you're too quiet, you're not assertive, like, again, gender norms, all of like everything's arbitrary. So pick and choose.
This got me thinking back to the original comment that I had about cardboard walls and like the rules.
Yeah.
You got me thinking about like almost
we ourselves are cardboard figures.
But also like what gateways do we want to put in the day? Like, you know, what because you've had that experience of so many different cultures of going from thin to fat by just switching with an airplane ride, like what gateways do you want in your life? And how can you pick and choose? And we blend from, I think you and I have both had the opportunity to experience different cultures, and mine are all really Western based. I really have no experience outside of sort of America or European cultures, but it's like already that is enough to start to play with the idea of what do I want? How do I want to show up? And how do you like trick your mind to like, like how do you trick your mind to being in Germany, but like feeling as beautiful as you were on the streets of Seoul?
I wish I knew the answer, Adele.
But it's just like, it's an idea. It's like a thought piece. Like, how do you do that in our lives? If we can start to play with the rules, how can we start to play with the things we do want as well? Like breaking the rules down of the constructs, but also enabling the other ways.
I mean, part of it is just like, the currently trending manifestation abundance practice where you just legit try to be in that space. You put yourself mentally in it, you visualize it, whatever, or you just physically go there. Like you feel more abundant if you go to a fancy art gallery in a like nice coat. Okay, do that. Or just the most important and easiest, I guess, not easiest, but fastest way to do it is just select who you spend time with and who takes your energy or gives it back to you, because you have those certain set of people you hang out with, especially at work, because they're there. It's just because it's convenient, it's familiar. But sometimes, especially when you level up or when you work on yourself or you have a new diagnosis, people don't like the change in you. They don't actually care that much. And then it really brings out to the forefront how much they actually care about you and let you develop into who you are. Like, because we're all constantly changing and evolving, whether you like it or not. And so you can always accept them as they are right now. If you can't, then you be like, let's just part ways for now. Let's just reduce time spent, or really be mindful of how people make you feel, and then setting up boundaries for yourself and with them, and maybe finding other spaces where something like that, like me talking about travel, I can't do that with most people because most people can't relate and they will put it down to me being boastful, bragging or something, which I never understood because it's me. It's just like talking about my day. It's just like, yeah, I was just in Tokyo and I did this thing and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, wait, what did I just say? Like, this was just to give you the context of like this cultural blunder I did, like, oh, this beautiful sign I saw. Like, I can't just like, I saw a beautiful sign or whatever. There's a story to it. I need the context. Anyway, then people, you realize how they interpret you and your actions also is something that you can not change, but you can accept or be like, I don't need that right now. We've been good friends. Maybe this was the season. It's all good. You don't have to cut people out right away or something like that. But just being mindful of, like they say, the 5 people you hang out with the most are affecting you. You're like a mix of them. So like, are you happy with them? Like maybe you want to spend more time in like business women mentorship groups, something like that. Or maybe you just want to do more with the hobbies. Maybe you want to feel that abundance by hanging out with all the plant moms, Like, what is it that you can change that can give you more of where you want to go that will automatically adjust your mindset? Because what I've learned is I can just sit and be in hermit mode and try to work on my shadow, work on my energy and brief exercises. But I'm only able to do so much on my own because we're also living in a society with other people and they will affect you. And you can't just fortify yourself or gray rock everything just to endure it, but you can actually get out of it more or less easily, but there's always a way if you wanted to. So seeing other people do a thing that inspires you or maybe just gets a reaction out of you. Sometimes that like jealousy and envy is something that like, I wish I could do that. And then when you look at it, you're like, well, I can try. Like it's not that they are awful because they're doing the thing that I cannot do. It's because I actually want that for myself, regardless of who they are, what they're doing. It's just, looking at things from a different perspective. And then I'm being like, okay, if I want to try this, would any of the people in my current circle be supportive of that? Or would they give me like a reality check and tell me to set the bar lower or like to, get more money? Like, you need to be mindful of your energy and your plans that way. Because for me, it's really helpful when I tell people what my plans are, but I need to kind of know them already because they will easily trample on them. And like, even if they mean well, even if the remark is very slight or like even disinterested, it will hit me a lot harder with my rejection sensitivities. I have to be really mindful of who I share and when I can share it, because sometimes I forget to share it. I'm like, I'm off to Australia next month. And they're like, wait, what? So like, that's not ideal. People are really mad at me for that. But it's what I needed. And if I had told anybody before I got everything settled, I would have never done it. And so like this kind of balance between you have to put yourself first without being like an asshole. But sometimes you just have to do that for your own sake. If you don't have the environment that be just generally supportive, they will call you out on your shit. That would be great. But also just be supportive. Like, yes, you want to build castles in the sky? Let's paint it pink, stuff like that.
That balance between like people help you paint your castles pink while at the same time like challenging you and calling you out on your shit is such a balance. And the thing is like the 5 people you surround yourself are so important, yet it's so hard to find those people to like call them in. And like even if they are, you do find them. I have these amazing people that I've met, but they're located around the world.
Yes.
I mean, they don't live next door. You can't just walk next door and sit down and pull up a cup of coffee and have the kind of conversations that you want. You're in a WhatsApp group, you jump into a Zoom call. And I mean, it's great that they're there and it's great that I started to find people like that. But it's like, why are we all so distant?
I feel you. Yeah, that's also been one of my biggest struggles. Like I can go months without like any physical contact. Like if somebody starts hugging me, like I start crying, I'm like, oh, you were completely like touch deprived. Well, that sucks, because you cannot get that from online networking groups. And there's a couple I tried, like one I'm in right now, which is so amazing and so supportive. But I haven't been able to find them like locally here. And I found it much more easy to connect with people when I was traveling because you already have a baseline conversation of like, I've traveled me too. Right. And yeah, so that is really hard, but it's also much more rewarding when you do find those random gems, right? It doesn't have to be a lot. Like it's not about the quantity. Oh my gosh, it's about the quality. Right? Because now I'm just much more selective of who I spend time with. If I realize, they're great, but not great for me right now, then I will be very consciously selecting how much I let them in or how much I spend time with them, even though sometimes I'm just like, oh, I need more social contact, but I know that will make me feel a certain way if I don't monitor my speech. And like, that's not where I'm at in my life. I just want to be me. I want to be unapologetic. I want them to be unapologetic. I don't want to just like constantly try to select topics to keep conversation flowing or to like, with these people, I can't talk about business or these people, I was just like, you need to have people for different things. Obviously, don't put it all on one person and they need to be your go-to for everything. That's not fair. But also, it's not fair of other people to just only limit your self-expression in that way. So like that's another struggle where I'm like, I'd rather have no one right now instead of just having people try to keep me at some kind of level that is convenient for them. I can't even hold it up to them because like that's a boundary that I need to set. Like if that's what they do, that's what they do. I'm not there to change them or like. So my God, there's so many things that you're working on when you're on this self-discovery journey.
You wonder, I'm in this and like I've been breaking it down and playing with it and looking at my shadow and figuring out what I want and having the conversation, shifting with the people. And you wonder like, do you ever get to another like plateau? Right. When you're doing the 9 to 5 and you have the family and like you check all the boxes that are like the rule book that's there. Like you feel like you're like on a plateau. Right. You're not really challenging yourself. You're not sort of like looking in the mirror and challenging yourself. Am I happy where I'm at? Am I doing what I want? How do
Until you get your midlife crisis.
Is it a midlife crisis or is it just like a realization that it's like...
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's what it is actually.
I got lost listening to what I was supposed to do and I lost connection with the voices inside of me that told me what is the path? What do I belong? What lights me up? I lost the connection to my spark and the sparkle. There doesn't seem to be an end to this road, because once you start to find out what sparkles, then something else sparkles, and then you grow, and then you challenge something, and because you know how to challenge that, and you look at that shadow, that opens up other possibilities, and then you grow, and you shift, grow, and you shift. And I'm starting to get the feeling that I had this original expectation that I'd go through this wonderful, wild transformation, and I'd come out the other side as a magical butterfly with these wings, and I would just sit at this new plateau of perfect happiness and abundance where I had it all figured out. And I feel like I'm just going to spend the rest of this lifetime just sparkling and shadowing and sparkling and shadowing and sparkling and shadowing.
Right. We've been bamboozled. Disney led us to wrong expectations. No, but that's true. Like, you constantly change. I feel like the past couple of days, I've like, I don't know, like for different media, I've just been like, what if I actually just like assumed that mentality of like, I'm that bitch. Like, I'm just going to do the thing that just resonates with me, because I'm also a very intuitive person. And like, if anybody's into human design, my authority is spleen, which means I get a gut feeling and says something, and then it's just quiet, and it just be like, you're on your own, you know the answer if you yes or no. Like, it's simple. And then so often it's actually very much correct. So I just choose to ignore it, or like, I'm busy. But that's what I feel like if I'm like in alignment with myself, if I'm just completely my weird self on any given day, even if it's low energy, then I'm like zombie mode. I'm like, yeah, I'm just monotonous. I don't have energy. And then suddenly next call, I'm like, boom, that's me energy, right? And if I just allow myself to be that, and then source through the people who are like, oh my gosh, I don't like this. They're like, good riddance. And then there's people, oh my God, I like your energy. I'm like, stay with me. Thank you. And the more I do that, it is less energy exhausting. It is much more rewarding. And it also helps me in a business sense, which feels more daunting to me, because like, I overanalyze everything, like the pitch, and then like run it through ChatGPT. Can you make it more professional? Like, can you make it less offensive, or like whatever? Like when I'm direct, I'm like, oh, I like your website is kind of weird. If you need help, I can't say that to people, So I'm just like, what if I just did something like that? Where I'm like, okay, I'm just contacting them left and right. I'm just like, I'm here. This is me. This is like what I do. Not overthinking this entire like, oh, you need to correct the pitch. You need to like have all of this funnel in action. Like, it just gets me paralyzed. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, am I good enough to contact this company? Is this the correct way? There's like so many different ways I could go about it. But while I've been doing that for months, what if I had just sent out a contact just like, hey, I would love to connect, like 5 months ago. And then 4 months ago would be like, oh, here's like an example of a pitch. And then the next month I could have been like, oh, here, I did a new thing. Maybe that's interesting. Not in that time that I did nothing but self-doubt. I could have done something else. And then I would have maybe found people who suddenly know about me, and suddenly I fit into that, because you never know their schedule. You never know who's in charge. Maybe they change things, because it's the thing, you never know. And so I don't know, I kind of like this idea, but it scares me at the same time to just do it, like whatever messy way. And there's so many people like telling you that, like, just take messy action. And I also take it like literal. I'm like, oh my gosh, do I send out all the typos? Do I like, I still need to make it professional? Like, but just sometimes it's like as easy as, hey, I just want to connect. I'm like, what do I have to like, so why do I have to like make a perfect pitch? And then yesterday I watched this YouTube video of Call Me Chris. She's amazing. She's like famous from TikTok. And she just set herself with random goal of like DMing 100 celebrities on Instagram. And she filmed herself because she would never otherwise do it. And then while she was doing it, she's just like, what? I'm just going to say, hey, dude, like, what's up? Like, I like your movie. Like, it was so low effort. She didn't even think, because she needed to go through all of these 100. I was like, maybe I need that in business. And then I was like, oh, is this unprofessional? But what if it isn't? What if they never get an actual just, hey, I want to hang out with you? Like, maybe that's refreshing, because you just generally like, oh, I like your hairstyle. Like, your glasses look fun. Let's connect, because I'm also fun. I don't know, like stuff like that is so left field, that it might actually be memorable, because you were in the moment, you didn't censor yourself. And if they think like that's a weird person, doesn't have to mean, because my rejection sensitivity tells me that they will hate me and they will go on a smear campaign and tell everybody how awful a person I am because I asked them about the weather or whatever. Like my mind will always tell the worst case scenario, like, oh my gosh, they're going to put me on a blacklist or red list or whatever list of like banned people because they're weird and obnoxious. What if they just move on with their day, or maybe they never see it? I can't do anything with them. Like their reaction is theirs, and I can only try. But so it's a process. But I kind of like this idea of being like just trying on to be that bitch for like a week. But like the consequences of my ADHD impulsivity, I don't trust it.
But you said that when you were traveling, you would try on different personalities. Was there any personality that you tended to like a lot? I mean, the bitch personality's come up a few times, but is there any of the personalities that you tried on that you're like, this is my favorite?
Me. Unfiltered me, like full on doses. Like, I like that the most, where I got people to be like, oh my God, I saw your video. That was so weird. Let's be in one together. I'm like,
oh my God. I think that's my favorite. I don't think I could hope for a better answer. Unfiltered 100% me is my favorite.
Yeah, but that's so vulnerable, and I think that's the problem. It's so funny because I've been a content creator for like 10 years almost, which is the content is me. But it, you put yourself out there, and everybody has an opinion, and that hurts. But yeah, like I look at these videos, which are so whack, and I'm like my biggest fan of those, but I don't apply that to my business because, as much as I try to be this more myself, more unapologetic, authentic self, I still have those mental blocks keeping me in check to not just send out these random messages to people thinking I might be like doing a big, big faux pas. Like in trouble, there's no repercussions, but with business, there's like a footprint.
But but if it's a footprint of people who you never hear from again,
yeah,
is it a footprint?
Good question. Yeah, because like because that's the thing. If you are yourself, you just naturally like sort people out. Like I call it the business sorting hat, where you're like, they like my vibe, they don't. And then it's great because at least you know what you're getting, at least they know what they're getting. You don't have this weird kind of introductory stage where you're both playing a part until like you're no longer business catfishing them. I hate that. I'm just like, no, this is what you're going to get down the road. So you're going to get it on day one. Boom. Right. But so many people keep telling me, and I'm sure a lot of like listeners resonate with that, how to be professional, how to show up. Like this, again, all of these written rules, all of these random rules, like you should not message them outside of office hours. You should not like wear colorful clothes or colorful hair, or you should like have a certain kind of like assertiveness to it, a certain kind of verbiage, and you should use smileys, all of these things until like you are purposefully disruptive, but then it's kind of also strategic. And I'm like, there's too many rules. It's frying my brain. I just want to just say hi. I love your stuff. Can we be friends? Call me. I'm like, I don't have any more energy to say anything else. But then with the bitch side, because like I said, when I research companies and I look at this stuff, I'm like, that pains me physically to watch your website. This is awful work. And that's just me like, oh God, you can't tell them that. That's where the anxiety comes in, because I can be very direct. Like when I'm critical, I'm like harsh to myself, to others. So I try to not, like when people ask me for their opinion, I'm like, do you really want my opinion? I'm always like, I don't want to hurt people because like it can come across as mean. I don't want to be that. That's not what I mean. But like, that's where I find, again, the rejection sensitivity is really going overboard when I try to pitch to companies, not because I love what they do, but I don't like what they're doing, but I like them enough that I have so many cool ideas for what to do. If they take it or not, that's beyond my control, obviously. But I don't want to just like be arrogant about it, like, oh, I can do it better than you. Because like, that's not it. But that's where I find I stumble, where I'm like, okay, how can I tell them this shit sucks? They need help. Maybe they don't know. Maybe they do know. Maybe they actually don't care. But I don't know until I talk to them. And then I'm like, how do I say it as like a professional person without watering it down too much? Because it's seriously bad. Or if they just don't actually care about it, why am I like focusing on them in the first place?
I thought it was interesting that you're pitching companies that you like sort of don't like.
I know. Isn't that funny?
It's funny. It's like you're not going after the companies that like you really like. But it's like sort of the lukewarm people.
That's good. That's a good reframe. Because I feel like if I look at the companies that I like, then I always think they're perfect. Like, what should I do there? You know what I mean?
Okay.
And I'm like, what can I do there? Like, I mean, I always can find something. Like, there's always something. But I'm just like, you already got a good thing going. Like, what? I don't know what to do here.
It makes me wonder if people from a different perspective, like companies that are perfect for you and they couldn't do anything better, I wonder if somebody else would send them an email that says you're terrible. Like, here are all the things I think you could fix from my perspective, you know?
Imagine.
I wonder if it's
Yeah.
ultimately a perspective thing. And as you said, like not playing the, what was it, catfishing you called it? The like pretending to be something else until you sort of are already too deep into the relationship to be like, wait a second, you're not who you say you are.
Right.
Your website says you're fun and quirky, but really you're very black and white.
Right? Yeah. Usually it's the other way around. They're just like, you're so boring, and I just completely ignored you. Why didn't you tell me you're fun? You know? Like, that's usually when I'm just like, you're actually cool. Like, but I ignored you because you seemed like terrible. Because sometimes people did that with
a lot of
me.
us are afraid to. I think a lot of us are afraid to show our quirky.
Yeah, I think that's why I resonate with these companies so much, because I'm like, I can see their potential. It's like a bad toxic relationship. I can see your potential, you know, but you're not willing to commit. No, but like so many times I'm just like, what the heck you're doing? You're clearly just like fumbling around. You need just better guidance, and then we can like both shine like amazing stuff. You know, and there's like so many corporations who would do a pretty good job, and they're like so brilliant because I have all of the money to throw around. And then so many, like, I always kind of want to support the underdog, but then they're like treading water already. They don't see it, or that's just me, and when my mind blocks, you know, limiting beliefs and all of that. But that's usually what I find. Like, I always just like, I don't know, like maybe I'm just projecting. I was just like, oh, I remember when I was like this lonely lost soul, and I would try to censor myself, like, break free, little butterfly kind of situation in business, you know? Because, because like, with me, I grew up thinking I needed to fit this box, and then as soon as I had to like graduate and like apply for businesses, I read up on all of these ways to be the most square person possible, so you're hireable. You know, it was just like I did a big research into all of these stupid tips of how to like not be yourself. That was horrible, but yeah, and so I was like,
I like it that there's an entire research department of how not to be yourself.
no, I mean, that was like, that's me summarizing it. But like, I did research into how to do your, like, how to part your, like, there's actual research on like a lot of things, like hair color on women in business, parting of your hair in business, what kind of makeup in business, like all of these social cultural studies on what it means, like according to your characteristics and like the first impression, like how firm your handshake has to be, how long it has to be, like what the length of, you know, like there's all of these ridiculous reasons and suggestions and statistics of like what people like give you a quick snap judgment, and you can kind of control it to some extent. I mean, like, you know, there's a whole PR field with like people in media and public eyes who have to go through PR training, you know, to elicit a certain kind of reaction, the way they use their tone, their hands, like their body posture, their hair, like politicians and all of that. They're all trained on how to be perceived in a certain way. And so I was just like, oh God, like nobody's going to like me for me. So obviously I have to train myself with the help of Google, because I was a broke student, obviously. Because people were always so taken aback when I was like so stressed from everything, where I got lost somewhere and had to run across a different town in my stupid outfit. And then I was so over like weird in the head that I couldn't mask anymore. So I was like, oh my God, hi, I'm Anne-Marie. Like, hi, I'm so sorry, I'm like, blah, blah, blah. They were just like full on mute. They're like, whoa, what's going on? Like, it's the last thing they expected from like, you know, a graduate applying to like a very serious position. It's just me like blasting through the door, you know, and then the reactions were for me a confirmation of like, oh, again, being me is bad. So like I never really gelled with corporate. I tried agency, also didn't work. So yeah, I do like the freelancing. And so I want to help other people like with the podcast, or just like connecting with them, or like just showing up as me to show them like, you're great. I think you're great. And just find other people who think you're great. And then that's what you need. Just like find a person that thinks you're great, and then you find another person, and then you ignore all of the rest, right? So like, you know, whatever. And then just build up yourself in a way that feels fulfilling to yourself in life and business, because it can be done. I've seen it be done by so many amazing, successful women. And so I just want to find more of these examples to put out there into the world, because I'm so done with the static cardboard people. Because if you're serious and you're like, you all that, like, that's great. You're living your truth. That's great. But not everybody is that. And so, yeah, I don't know. I could go on and on about this.
Maybe it is everybody, or maybe it's just the people who are in our current world of conversation, because we're in this process and moving from something that feels more cardboard into something that feels more colorful and authentically us.
No, but that again is how to do with who you hang out. Because like when I go visit people, like from my university days, or visit their families and stay with them, and I start talking about, I don't know, just like ADHD, they'll be like, oh, what's that? They don't know. Or I start talking about self-development. They look at me as if I'm like weird and woo-woo. And I'm like, oh, you're such a different crowd. I don't even know where to start explaining things. You can't just go talk to them like, hey, and if you're lost
in self-development, if you've lost them in self-development, you don't even go into human design. You don't even go in that road.
I know. So I was just like, so what do I talk about? The weather's nice. Look at the sun. Or like, well, I hate that. And they're just like, that's exactly those people that I do not want to hang out with. And there's, of course, like, it's not like, oh, I'd never talk to you again. But you just like, again, have to be like, okay, let's just find topics and common ground. Like, because we're all changing. They've changed. They have like kids and cars and jobs and like houses. And I'm like, so you have a kid? Mm-hmm. Does it like poop in the pants? Like, what do you talk about? Like, it's just like, it's a different lifestyle. Like, you just find people that vibe with you, or like people that you can just naturally connect with, regardless of where they are in life. Because, there's always ways. What I found, and I hate small talk, but what I found, like, the more I travel, more wide variety of people I find getting into contact with, that I can just strike up conversation about the most random things. These are the easiest for me. Just like comment on their outfit, say something nice about their hair, like something personal, like, hey, you look good. I'm like, nah, boring. No, it's just like, oh my gosh, like, can you imagine this, whatever. And like, you just find something so specific that draws their attention, so you get them into a conversation that isn't the weather or politics or something like that. Like, please no. So like, there's always a way, but sometimes I draw the line where I'm like, I don't want to be just facilitating this conversation. I need to get something back as well. Like those people, like, it's good. It's like, to try different people to get out of your bubble is so necessary. You can't just sit around with everybody who's just doing self work all the time and shadow work, because then you're just like spiraling together. Like, yeah, you're just like, oh my god, I worked up the shadow. Let's cry. Let's do just cry, like Kundalini yoga. So like, I'm crying on the floor, wiggling my hips. Oh my god. I'm like, and then you're just focusing on this aspect. It's all part of it. But at the same time, if I just go around and be like, I'm the bitch today, and I'm just like being like badass and feeling good about myself, and it's just doing me, like, that could just be as healing, right? And then you have like your bitch club. You go like bitch clubbing. I don't know. Or like, you just go gardening together. Like, there's so many multidimensional human beings, so it's like great to try out different things. And like, like, if you want to go paint with your fingers, you can do that, or you can like paint a big canvas, or you can like do something on paint on windows or whatever, or you just write a song about socks on your ukulele. I don't know, like whatever floats your boat that day, right? So like, just that curiosity, I think, is really important as well in that entire discovery, where it's not just like, let's look at all of the past rules. Not just like, no, let's just make something right now in this moment that feels good.
And it's so freeing. You give yourself permission to do the thing that really feels good in this moment, not in that sort of like numbing way, but like in that really, truly, like, this is what my system needs. It can be so freeing.
Right. If you just want to lie on the floor and look at the ceiling, cool.
And yet so hard.
Yeah. But sometimes I just like want to do something, and then I like open the door of the fridge and I just stare at it. And I think that's very, cathartic at some point. Like, it's not great for the energy, like, usage, and like, it's getting cold and stuff. But like, sometimes I'm like, I just need it to look at this light like a month. I just need to do this. And then I'd be like, okay, let's stare at it for a minute. It's like, it's what I need. And then if I have people there who would be like, what you doing? I'm like, go away. Some people you can explain it to, others
I'm having a moth moment. What do you want?
Moth moment. Exactly.
I'm having a moth moment. What do you want from me?
Yeah, just like, like in a miscongeniality, like, I'm over here gliding there. Like, just like floating, mothing around. It should be like a t-shirt merch. I'm having a moth moment. like visual stimulation, people get it. Oh my gosh. So how do you find your personally communities that you can like thrive in and be your weirdest self?
What communities do I have for that?
Yeah, or like, are you looking for them? Like, what are your criteria? How do you approach it? Especially because, yeah, you've been moved a while ago, but still, like, it's always new, finding other people, following hobbies.
I think I just sort of trust it. And I think the place where I'm at right now that's the most challenging is I have communities where I feel more comfortable being sort of the best version of myself or the version that I'm experimenting with that I enjoy. And then I feel like there's places where I sort of behave the way that I always have. So I feel like I'm sort of like in this transition where I have spaces where I can explore and I can express myself. And there's spaces where I'm like, okay, how can I take pieces of that into here without opening up the whole box of crazy?
Yeah.
If you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
As you said, like
Family.
you say, like, how can I bring that version of myself that really feels authentic and me and honest and confident and bring that into those situations without having to bring up all the things I'm working on right now or all the things I'm like in the process with, where in those environments I can have those conversations. And I think that's like finding support groups and like maybe it's business, maybe it's intuition work, maybe, and it's also who of my old community. So I call them cloud people in my life. The people in my life that go with me no matter where I travel.
I
They
love
just
that.
tag along. I call them my cloud people. And cloud people are people who, even if I haven't talked to you in 3 or 4 years, I could pick up the phone tomorrow and like maybe there'll be like a 10-minute like rough reintroduction, but then it's like I saw you yesterday and we were hanging out all the time. And literally one of my cloud people was a person who I went to a beach house with a friend who was visiting another friend, and she was like semi-dating this guy who was on the porch wearing moose pajamas. And I was like, I love your moose pajamas. Let's be friends.
I love it.
Literally Double Z and I are still friends to this day. And she's one of my core cloud people. And it's just like you allow these things to happen. And how do you run into them? And I think like I would have never met her if I wouldn't have just decided that this friend was coming. And when she suggested this, that we go here and then we go over there and we show up on this beach. And I think that's when you say, where do I feel the most comfortable? How do I find those environments? I find those environments when I trust myself the most.
Oh, that's a good one. It's true, because then you're also much more receptive to how you feel about them. Because again, one thing with travel is that I can instantly, like when I meet a person, my instantly gut reaction will like tell me something about them. We're like, oh no, well, yes, they're amazing, but just be lukewarm about it, like whatever. And I have learned that I need to trust that like 100% all the time, because, there were people where I got like alarm signals and then they robbed us. And I was like, should I listen? Like that was extreme. But like it's so important to trust it and just be in the flow, even if you're like, oh, I should have gone to this party, that would have been great. But sometimes you just have to allow yourself to just not do the thing just because you have to. Who says that? So you have to honor yourself, but also know your own like excuses. Because sometimes it's like, yeah, I'd rather not go, but you kind of want to go, but you kind of don't. You don't know, but like might be really good. Just knowing yourself and being also more compassionate. Be like, okay, maybe today we didn't go, but we kind of wanted to. We'll work on that. It's okay. I always say like we were just like me, and like having an inner dialogue with, I don't know, a petulant child or whatever. Yeah, just that kind of process of being, okay, that's just good. Let's just walk into that random party over there. Let's just go into this cafe. Let's just, contact that person on Instagram because their hair looks funny, or, something like that. When it just feels good, it doesn't even have to make sense all of the time, because usually intuition doesn't explain itself. It just says, and then you have to listen or not. Like, it's up to you. Yeah.
And sometimes it gives mixed signals and then you really don't know what to do with it.
Yes. And I feel like partly if you have been ignoring it, like for quite some while, where I'm just like, wait, that was a signal, but I can't interpret it. Was it good or bad? Like, is it a warning or I go for it? And that's really it's pretty bad. Like, might be good to know if it's like a really, really bad thing. And then it just doesn't do anything anymore. It's just like when you get a notification on your phone and then you accidentally like delete it, you're like, oh, that was an important email. Where did I get this email? Like, where did I get this? I do that way too often. So yeah, intuition is one big part of my current focus points, because when I'm not traveling, I'm not as tapped into it. Where I get it and I'm still busy, I'm like, no, I need to finish the sentence, and then it's gone. I'm like, yeah, so much for listening to your intuition. You're talking about it all the time. Look at me, hypocrite. So how do you define intuition? Like, what's it for you?
Intuition is like that sort of knowing
Mm-hmm.
in your system.
Yeah.
And sometimes the knowing comes as a voice. Sometimes it just comes as a feeling. Sometimes it comes as like understanding something that feels like you shouldn't understand it, which is like my most bizarre one, where you're just like, why do I get this? Why
Yeah, like a download, what people say.
Yeah. It's like, why does this make sense to me? But it's just like that truth and that honesty that comes from yourself. And the thing when I know that I'm in my intuition rather than my ego or really in my head is that it's a really calming sensation in my body. My system feels very at peace and very aligned. Even if it's like a danger signal, the system is still calm. It doesn't feel like it's being generated someplace else, like in my mind. Like an anxiety attack that's coming from my mind will feel very different than an intuition, like you should not be here.
Yeah. But for me, it shows up different ways. Like sometimes I have this weird ringing noise, like it's tinnitus. And I'm like, what do you hear? Or sometimes it's just like a random smell that makes absolutely no sense to be here. Like it cannot be explained. Sometimes like that, or just like I see is like, I like just knowing, like you said, where you just like find somebody or like you're lying. It could be pattern recognition or something, or you just like, you meet somebody, you're like, oh yeah, that would be great for a project. And you meet them and you're like, mm-mm. And it doesn't make sense logically. Like all of it on paper looks good. And you're just like, they're not it. And I'm like, okay, well, I gotta go for it. I can't even explain to you why I reject you right now. Like, this is not gonna work out. Something like that. Where it's just like, it's just there. It's like a fact. Like, but usually for me, it's very fleeting. It's just like, yes, and then it's gone. I'm like, just calm doesn't stay for me. That's for me. It's just like, no, I'm like, that's a bad street. Don't go. And then it's gone. I'm like, wait, I have follow-up questions.
Do you cultivate it at all? Because that's where a lot of people do meditation to sort of calm their mind. Like that was the assumption when I first started doing meditation, that my mind would be quiet.
Yeah.
And when I freed myself the expectations that my mind would be quiet, and I started I allowed myself to have a conversation, but our meditation completely changed for me and became much more effective and much more grounding, which I think it's supposed to do for you. I have all these conversations with myself and they start here and then they move. It starts into like the to-do list and all the expectations and all the worries and the anxieties. And as I sit, it moves into my intuition and having more of a conversation at intuition level about these things. So then if I've meditated long enough or I'm connected, I can have those follow-up conversations with it. What is going on here? What's the next step? Reflecting and going back and forth and having those sort of moments with my intuition. And that's where meditation helps me. That's how I see meditation in a way, is that it's that moving from, especially somebody who's trained in engineering and logically minded and building structures and frameworks, moving from here into my body and into that trust is a journey.
Yeah. I haven't been patient enough for that. I usually just sit there and I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling calmer now. Like for me, it's this typical thing where it's just like, oh, all of the thoughts are like clouds. You just watch them. Like they're just like there, but you just sit there and I'm like, yep, I have all these thoughts, but not focusing. Like that's usually what I do. And then I get bored. And I also like usually when I am like, I don't know, I haven't tapped into that conversation yet. At one point I did with like journaling where I was like writing on page questions and then I answered them, but like in a different like writing style. I was like, that's trippy. And like in ways I would have not actually said the thing. I was like, okay, where did that get channeled from? Weird. But I hate journaling. I hate writing and stuff. Like I get a cramp. Like I'm like the typing on a keyboard kind of person. So like I can't do that as much. And then my thoughts are way too fast. And then I like can't keep up with writing. That freaks me out. But like meditation, I like guided meditation when people talk to me or tell me something. I will not do what they say anyway, but it helps me stay on track. It's like, like stimming. Like I can hear your auditory stimming basically, just like a background noise, but I can like fix it on so I can fix on my brain. stuff like that. But I'm still too much in my head in it. I'm just, at one point I had like tarot that really helped me externalize some things, because like essentially just interpreting things anyway, but it helps you reflect on like, oh, that's what I interpreted. Okay, yeah, that's, I'm in an external process. So like talking to people about it, saying things out loud helps me actually go like, oh, okay. And they don't even have to say anything. Sometimes, many times I even get offended that I don't take your advice, or I don't actually want your advice. I just read some soundboard where I needed to hear advice to know that it's not for me. Right. So, but I feel so weird talking to myself, that I think like, I don't know what that's about. Just having a self conversation with myself. I can't bring myself to it.
I think in many ways we were one of those like sort of things, like talking to yourself is not society. Yeah. Like it's not something that like is ever talking to yourself is never something that is identified as a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, like you see with like old people and they're saying things out loud to like remember, or like crazy people, like all of the stupid segway. But sometimes I just like for fun, like narrate my life and sing along, which is like, I'm gonna open the pan and I'm gonna like pour in the butter and I'm just making up stuff. Like that's cool, that's fun, but it's just like having actual conversation with myself. That's where suddenly all of my creativity and visualization just goes. And I was just like, okay, I'm literally talking to a wall. This is so weird. I can't remove myself from that situation too. And I can't just constantly talk to people because I am in a hermit mode and I don't want to just like dump on people all the time until like rotate. I'm like, oh my God, have I not dumped on you lately? I need somebody. Like that's just also not the solution.
It's such a personal journey, finding out how you tap into it. And I find it so interesting that your intuition has to deal with like your hearing and your smell and like your physical senses, how they react with intuition, because it's not something that I have personally ever experienced. So I find
it's so confusing. It's like constant. Can you make up your mind? There's all these people like, oh, are you clairvoyant? Are you like audiovoyant? Like I don't know, all of these voyant things. And I'm just like, I get all of them sometimes. It's really about some kind of sensory thing that puts me in some situation where I felt something before in that way. And then I'm like, oh yeah, this feels like that place, that one street I went down in Tokyo on that certain day. That's what this smell sounds like, feels like. Like, I don't know, so, like I get very specific kind of deja vu kind of situations, or almost like a projection onto my eyeballs. Like sometimes I walk down the street and like this random leaf on this tree reminds me of that one tree in that one country on that one day. And then I'm suddenly like in that space, like it's a like holographic image, and I'm in the moment and feeling the moment from that moment ago. And then I'm like, what was the point? It makes me feel good, but like I don't get it. Like I don't know how to interpret oftentimes. It's truly
interesting.
I know.
I love how different people tap into their intuition. It's really interesting to see different people's when you start exploring in that world. And like, yes, there's meditation and there's intuition, but there's also like some of the more clear side of things of like, feeling like you're doing that projection work. It's really interesting to see how different and varied that is in that whole conversation.
Yeah. That's why I love talking about intuition, because it's so wild. Everybody's so different and has different connections to it. Like some people just really feel it in their gut. They are like a sinking feeling or a good feeling, or like it feels like, somebody's in their head saying yes or no, but no sound actually. It's just like there. I don't know. It's so interesting. Where like even sometimes I have these weird reactions. Like I wonder, like at one point I was walking towards like some church or whatever, and I stepped on this, I don't know, stone, probably like a tombstone, like into the wall, whatever. And it felt like gravity pulled me down. I was just like frozen in space, like in this place for it felt like forever. I don't know how much time passed. I have no idea, but it was just like I couldn't physically move. It was like, like in this vortex. I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna go into this church. Thank you.
Like I can feel that pressure as you're telling the story. Like
it was just like. I was just like, in those sci-fi movies, when they put this beam of light on you, you're like frozen and they walk around, you're like moving your eyeballs. I don't know how that makes sense physically, but like, it's what I do. That's what it felt like. And all these people walk by, I'm like, oh my God, you're being so weird. And I had that also with people sometimes. So I'm just like, oh, I'm like, wait, what? like, okay, I'm going to talk to that person now. I got the message. When you just like want to turn around, you're like, you can't. Okay. It's weird, but it's so random. Like, it's really, I don't know. There's no pattern to it. I guess it makes sense on a higher level.
But I think writing to you was a bit intuition find. Like, literally, you posted in a forum group that I barely ever see any posts from. And I saw it and I was like, oh, this is an interesting question. And I responded, and then you pinged me, and now we're sitting here. I mean, the probability we would have crossed paths was very low.
I love that. Yeah, I love those random encounters, which are so natural, but so unfacilitated and just spurred the moment. Because I was like, I need more speakers, blah, blah, blah. And now I'm like having speakers for the next 2 months. I already edited all of the things. I have like so many, like I don't have time right now. Like it's just cool. And then I just posted on our website. And I was like, oh my God, what if not the right people find it? Because some of them were like not, like I didn't really vibe with them, but they never responded to me after that. I'm like, okay, that's good. Sorted. I don't even have to say no, thanks.
Intuition connections, like my friend with the moose pants, like my conversation with you, like trying to explain them to my husband. Is like like he is sensitive. That's not really the right word. He definitely like senses things. He's not completely like non-empathetic, but like trying to explain, who is this woman that you're on a podcast with? How do you know her? How has this connection been made? Well, I met her in an online forum, and then we chatted. Just online friends make no sense to him as I've joined this world and running an online business, getting my coaching certification through a program out of New Zealand, like all these people who I have these connections with now that I've never met in person. My husband is like, how can you talk to them multiple times a day when you've never met them? And I was like, but I have met them. I just never seen their knees.
Yeah. I love that. This would also go on a t-shirt. I have friends, but I never see their knees.
I'm my best friend, and you're my best friend, and I've never seen your knees.
Oh my God. Yes. Oh, that is hilarious. Yes. No, exactly. I mean, that's like one of the most interesting like friendships that I've developed over the past like decade. Most of them started online, where I was just like, oh my God, I like their stuff. Like I like their vibe. I like their weird storytelling or whatever. And then I was just like following them, and then maybe I jumped on a call with them, or maybe I met them on like a networking event somewhere in the world. And then suddenly we're like best friends we've never met before. Like so many times I was at these networking events, especially like for travel bloggers, and I was just instantly like gravitating to some people. I was like, oh my God, you're there in person, you're there in person. And then like we both like cute aggressive like towards I'm like, oh my God, I love you, I love your stuff, yeah, I love you too. Like, and then there's this random person walking by. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're like reunited old friends. Like, no, we've seen each other for the first time just now. You're experiencing that right now. I'm just like, what? But I've done so many times where people are like, wait, you just met like now, but like you were already attached to the hip. It's like, yes, we're best friends, And it's so weird. And then sometimes you talk to people online, and then you meet them in real life, you're like, oh, it's just an online connection. But usually it's not like that. But it's so wild to describe it to somebody. Like sometimes I travel different countries for these people I've never met in real life. For all I know, I could have been catfishing, but like, I mean, if you're a content creator, like you show a lot of your face, like that would be hard to upkeep, especially pre-AI. But yeah, so many times people were like just like so freaked out by all of the stuff, or like sometimes I just tweeted at the internet and like, hey, anybody in Tokyo wants to meet up, super specific. And then just amazing people showed up. Out of all of the people who could have contacted me, there are people showed up who I'm still friends with. And I'm like, how? It's perfect.
And that, I think, in some ways is a perfect example of intuition. Like you send stuff out to the void, and if you do it with the right intention, the right people find it and come back.
Yeah, I guess that goes hand in hand with like self-trust, where you're like, I wish somebody would find it. I can't find them here. Like I often hear myself talk nowadays. So I'm like, I don't hear, like, I can't find it. Well, I'll see people in this town. Like, and obviously I don't. Yeah, I'm calling it. So I'm like, oh, damn it. Yeah. No, but that's true. And then just also being in your, like being aware of yourself when you do get people talking to you, responding to your, that you can also be like, yeah, it's not a match, or, alarm signals go off in your head. Like that you can be like unapologetic and say like, no, this is not it. Like, don't pressure me into doing this because you think it's cool, or maybe you have an agenda or whatever. But you just firm on yourself. You're like, no, it's not right for me. Like, not personal. Maybe it's personal, but like generally, I don't actually know you yet. So like my people pleasing tendencies, that's where they come up and be like, oh, but you have to give everybody a chance. And then my therapist goes like, why? I'm like, yes, you're right. Why? Why? I don't have to.
I have to admit, I'm fading a bit. My energy is beginning, and this chair is very uncomfortable.
Oh my gosh, look at them people. This is ADHD. You always have to be really mindful of that, and also be very transparent. That's great. Thank you for communicating that. All good.
But I wanted to make sure that I'm showing up the best for you, and I can feel myself starting to get sleepy and sore. So
that's okay. We've been at it quite a long time. So yeah, we maybe could do that again in the future. And when you are at your super best. So like there's always new topics to talk about. Like it would never run out of topics with ADHD. We could go on side quests if we wanted to.
Side quest forever!
Yay! Smashing that. Like sometimes I like to treat my life like a video game. Like
I do all the time. Are you kidding me?
It's the best way. Any parting advice you want to leave the audience with? Anything we haven't covered that you kind of want to briefly go over, but not in too much detail? Words of wisdom.
I'd say trust that there's possibilities. Trust that there's opportunities and options in your life.
Yeah.
And that little tickle that sort of tells you to do something, trust it.
Yeah.
Experiment with it. Give it a little bit of space. Allow it an experiment for a day, a moment, and just see where it leads.
I love that. Because it's also reassuring to your intuition that it's being heard. It's not like no wasted on you, but also it's like a low effort situation when you go like, yeah, you have to be open for opportunities. You have to look for them. That feels pressure. But if you say like, just trust that there are some, doesn't mean you have to actually look for them, or doesn't mean you have to like it doesn't have to do anything. You just know it's there. And it just makes you more trusting of yourself, of the abundance, of there will be something else. Like if I miss this opportunity, there's another one. Like if I close that door, the universe will come up with another way. Like, I just need to be open to collaborating. And then the more I do that, the more I'm attuned to it, and the more then I can actually see the opportunities. I know it's there, but currently I'm like torchlight. Maybe I just need to find a light switch, but like no pressure, right?
Yeah, and I think in many ways, as if you're somebody who hasn't really been working with your intuition or trusting your intuition in a really long time, maybe since you were a kid, like we all have it. We all have that like little tickle, that calling, that like little buzz of like, do this, do that we ignore.
Oh yeah, it's a survival thing.
Just give it a little space and see where it leads to. And I think when we think about our life as an experiment, if we think about this opportunity as an experiment, it takes the pressure off that we're making big life changes, or that we're making a non-reversible decision by saying, okay, I'm going to experiment. If I have this tickle to do watercolor art, for example, I'm going to just do an experiment of like maybe drawing on my iPad or watching a YouTube video and seeing if it's interesting. Like keep it small. Just experiment and see where it leads, and then follow the next tickle.
Exactly. You don't have to completely uproot your life and become a watercolorist, okay?
Exactly.
Even though your ADHD might tell you so, but, I mean, it can. You have a new hobby and you have all this stuff, and then, like, no more dopamine. You're like, oh, that was that. But, it might have led you to a cool new location, which you otherwise wouldn't have gone to if you hadn't followed that urge. Like, so many times I just transplanted myself to other places, and that was kind of a failure, but like that stuff that it kicked off into motion, that was what is actually pertinent. Sometimes your universe tricks you into some things.
Yeah.
So be open for the opportunities.
Exactly. What are the opportunities that exist? And then, what are the opportunities that exist in this adventure?
I love that. Oh my gosh, that's such a good quote. Another merch. I don't do merch. I'm just saying it. Maybe somebody will like beg me to, then I might do it. People beg me to. Thank you very much. Anyway, so where can people find you and beg you for merch?
Probably the easiest way to be in contact with me is on LinkedIn. I'm just Evelyn Pacitti. Or you can always go to my website, measurablewellness.com.
I love it. I'll put the links down below into the description. And thank you so much. I wish you a lovely day, some more energy.
Thank you.
And talk to you soon. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast episode. I had such a blast. I could have talked on and on about it, but I loved how Evelyn just shared her current status and a little insight into her energy levels, because we all have to be very mindful and respectful of that. And I am also slowly learning to communicate that, and that is totally okay to tell people, sorry, my social battery is out, I gotta tap out. Usually I just, the typical Irish goodbye, I was like, peace out, bye. Before people could come up with the, oh, please stay, why you're leaving, because I didn't want to explain or have them find a way to like logic their way to keeping me back there when I'm really not in the best space, because only you know you, and you don't owe people your presence at the end of the day, especially if you're depleted afterwards. That's not fair. So I love that. And I might have her back on a future episode, because like, well, there's so much we could have talked about, and so many cool segues and side quests that the typical ADHD mind can come up with at a fracture of a second, and that can get really wild. With that, I'll leave you to it, and as always, I put the links down below into the show notes if you want to follow Evelyn or me and just say hi, start a conversation, ask us about our latest special interests, and let us info dump. That's always a good way to an ADHD heart. And I hope I see or hear you back in the next episode, which always comes out on Fridays. So peace out and bye!